You see, so that is an important declaration to us. It's not just two words that we stick together. It's way more than even a sermon series. It is a declaration of faith. It is a declaration of what it is we're all about, because we have actually said from week 1 of this series, which was now 8 weeks ago, even though this is part 7, work with me, 8 weeks ago, that so that is about much more than a building. It's about building the church. We've said that every week. If you've been here or you watch some of these online, there has not been a week where we have not made that declaration, because that declaration has been true from the start and is true right now. We are in the process, for those of you that don't know, of securing and renovating and opening up a permanent home for believing right here in the heart of Memphis, and we're excited about that. But this journey has been much more than about a building, and today it continues to be about much more than a building. It's about building the church. It's about building your faith. It's about building my faith. It's about us leaning in together and locking arms and doing way more together than we ever could on our own. And so today what I want to do is I want to go to the scriptures like we do each and every week. And I want to go to a collection of scriptures in the book of Nehemiah that is very significant to me. And I'll explain to you over the course of the next few moments why these scriptures are so significant to me. But my prayer for you as we walk through these is that not only is your mind informed as to what's going on and where we're at in our So That project, which I'm going to do all that as we work through this, but also for some of you that your faith would be encouraged. For some of you that your strength, your belief would be encouraged. For some of you that maybe God would speak to you in a fresh, clear, alive way for the first time, maybe in a long time, through this little story in the book of Nehemiah. Now, we're going to start in Nehemiah chapter 1, and I'm going to catch you up because I'm basically going to, I'm not going to get to the end of the story, but we're going to walk through a good bit of this together. So let's jump in. Nehemiah chapter 1. These verses are going to be on the screen, and inside your worship today, or worship guide today, you have a sheet where you can take some notes today. I didn't give you a little fill in the blanks because I just wanted you to be able to take some notes. So you write some stuff down. You can write down Nehemiah chapter 1. That'd be a good place to start. Here we go. This is what it says. It says, during the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, this is Nehemiah, self-titled work, I was in the fortress city of Susa. Hanani, one of my brothers, arrived with men from Judah. I questioned them about Jerusalem and the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile. They said to me, the remnant in the province who survived the exile are in great trouble and disgrace. Jerusalem's walls have been broken down and its gates have been burned down. This next sentence is the sentence I want to lean into for just a moment. So give special attention to this. Maybe you would even write down in your notes, Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4, because that is what this is. He says, when I heard these words, Nehemiah talking, I sat down and I wept. I mourned for a number of days, fasting and praying before the God of heaven. Nehemiah heard a report right here. This is the way he starts this work. He hears a report about his homeland, a place that he loves, but he did not live in. And a report that, quite honestly, he wasn't even expecting. He wasn't out looking for information, wasn't trying to gather. He did not have a strategic plan. His brothers had just come back from the homeland, and since he sat down with his brothers like you would do if your brothers came back from your hometown and you didn't live in your hometown, one of the questions that would probably come up while you were sharing your meal together is, so tell me, how is everything in the neighborhood? Wouldn't you? How's everything back home? We ask that question all the time. And the response that Nehemiah received from his brothers shook him. It shook him. What he heard, maybe it was what he expected to hear. Maybe it wasn't. What we do know is that what he heard shook him. And here's what's significant. Nehemiah allowed what he heard to break his heart. Now, to catch you up historically as to what's going on, the book of Nehemiah, if you were to open it in your Bible or locate it in your phone, you would actually find it sort of at the, kind of in the middle, but really towards the early half of the scriptures that are the Old Testament. Which would make you think that maybe, this is super old. This is thousands of years before Jesus arrives on the planet. And actually, no, your scriptures aren't laid out that way. The Old Testament isn't laid out chronologically. It's grouped in a different fashion. The book of Nehemiah, some scholars believe, may actually be one of the closest works to actually the beginning of the New Testament. There's this gap, this period of 400 years, but they believe that the story of Nehemiah actually would fall right after Daniel. It would be very, very close to this gap period that then Jesus arrives on the scene. And Nehemiah is working for the government. He's got a government job. He works for the government that are these people who came in and took over his homeland because he was a Jew by birth, by ethnicity. And before Nehemiah had arrived on the scene, the Jews had been struggling. They had been overtaken and overtaken again, and half of them had been put into exile, and the other half went into exile, and their nation was a mess. But Nehemiah worked for the government that was the overtaking government, but yet his nationality was a Jew. So his homeland, the land that he loved, the not only the physical place he was from, but for them, the spiritual place that they were from was this place called Jerusalem. And Jerusalem had been decimated. That was not news to Nehemiah. Nehemiah would have known that because the entirety of Nehemiah's life it had been decimated. There were people living there, but these people were living in a city without walls whose gates had been burned down. Now, that may not sound significant to you or to me on the surface, because the success and the significance of any city today has nothing to do with a wall that goes around it or how good a condition the gates are. We would talk about what are the conditions of the roads, what's the unemployment rate, how's the housing market, to figure out the quality of life in that city. But in that day, in that time, the walls around a city were significant because it demonstrated its strength. That's how they protected themselves from other entities that may want to try to take them over. Not only that, the access provided by the gates are what enabled them to say, you cannot come in, and you can come in, and you cannot come in. So there were people living in Jerusalem, but they had no protection. There were people living in Jerusalem, but when they thought about themselves as this weak city of has-beens, this weak city that, well, there was a day when we were strong. There was a day when things were good. There was a day when we had God's blessing on what we were doing, but that day is not today, baby. That's the way they felt. And Nehemiah knew this. But yet when his brothers bring him this report, when his brothers meet up with him and they just start having a conversation about what was going on, something broke Nehemiah's heart. He allowed God to do something on the inside of him in that moment. Now, some of you are familiar with the story of Nehemiah. You've seen it. Maybe you saw a play one time, watched a movie. Maybe you read it. You're just a Bible scholar. And for those of you who know that, I am sorry, because you know way too much about the end of Nehemiah's story to miss who he was in the beginning. Because at the beginning, you got to understand, Nehemiah was not in the protege leadership program. He was not on your 30 under 30 or 40 under 40 lists. Like you were going to find him there. Nehemiah had a government job, and his government job was he was the cupbearer to the king, which would prove very important as we go along because he had access to the king. But he was very disposable by nature. See, what he did as the cupbearer is it was his job to drink whatever the king drank before the king drank it. Because they had lost a lot of kings. They had lost a lot of important people by people sort of poisoning the cup of the king. And so if the king had his morning coffee, before the king had his morning coffee, Nehemiah would take a little sip out of that pot. When the king has a great banquet going on and he has his big goblet with wine, before the king gets his goblet, Nehemiah needs to take a little test. Because what they'd rather have is Nehemiah get sick and protect the king. Can I take it a step further? What they'd rather have is Nehemiah die than the king die. Which, if that's your job, you've got to feel somewhat disposable, right? I mean, by nature of doing the best you can at your job, you are disposed of, you know? They'll tell great stories about he really protected the king as we are sitting here at his funeral, you know? Like, his job was to throw himself out in front to protect the king. He was not this great leader, this great strategist, this aspiring, I'm gonna change everything, but he was someone who would allow God to break his heart. And God can use that. See, that's my question for you this morning. Have you ever let God break your heart about something? Have you ever let God break your heart about something? I mean, sincerely wreck you on the inside because of what is reality. To break your heart about the condition of kids in a particular zip code. To break your heart about socioeconomic realities, racial realities, to break your heart about what's happening in a particular system, in a particular sector of our society. Have you ever let God break your heart about something? The kind of break your heart where you can't think about anything else. See, that's what happened to Nehemiah. If you were to keep reading, verse 5 begins Nehemiah dumping this prayer that he prayed to God right there in the scriptures. And he prays to God. He says, God, I know we've been bad people. My people have been bad. They've been super bad. But God, have mercy on us. He let God begin to break his heart about this. And he recognized that he was weak to do anything. He recognized that he was incapable of bringing this about himself, because he actually ends Nehemiah chapter 1 with the most strange way. That is the place where Nehemiah discloses to us that at the time that God broke his heart, at the time that he heard this news, at the time that he was wrecked on the inside and couldn't think about anything else, he was the king's cup bearer. Which reminds me, I don't have to be anything in other people's eyes for God to break my heart. And you don't either. See, some people get nervous about allowing God to really wreck you on the inside about the situations that are going on around us. To really let your heart be broken about everything that's going on in your neighborhood, in your city, in your country, on this planet. To really let God disturb you on the inside. Some of you think you don't have enough of a title. You don't have enough of an influence. You're not old enough yet. Baby, you are wrong. Because at the time that Nehemiah's heart was broken, he was the cup bearer. But Nehemiah didn't stop with a burden. He didn't stop with a burden. In fact, it was that burden moment that then pushed him into action. If you flip the page to Nehemiah chapter 2, what you will find is that Nehemiah used his access to the king, not his influence, because he didn't have any influence, he just had access. He only had influence by how he did his low-rung government job that gave him access to the king, but was not very significant, per se. And he leveraged that access to go before the king and say, King, I have a question for you. Do you know about the state of things in Jerusalem? And of course the king knew. You know why? Because his predecessors were the very ones who had gone in and decimated Jerusalem. The reason Nehemiah and all of his people were in captivity, and some of them were back, but they were in this broken down place, is because of that king's kingdom. Of course he knew what it was. But Nehemiah, because he was burdened, walked up to the king and said, King, I think I'm supposed to do something. Because the walls are broken down. The gates are destroyed. And I'm wondering, King, if I were to step out and lead this charge to rebuild these walls, will you finance me? That's a little short version of what Nehemiah did. And the king said, yep. Isn't that crazy? Isn't it crazy how sometimes people will step in with you, step behind you, if you could just have just a little bit of faith. Just a little bit of faith to step out there. A little bit of faith to do something sound a little crazy. A little bit of faith to allow God to break your heart just enough where it requires you to take a step. See, Nehemiah didn't just have this burden and go, oh, I feel so bad. Oh, I feel so sick. Oh, I hate the way it's going to go, but I got to go to work at 9 tomorrow, so I guess I'm just going to go back to work. Nehemiah let it wreck him. Wreck him so much he went to the king and asked for provision. And when the king granted it to him, Nehemiah then went to Jerusalem, took a trip on his own to try to figure out what the exact state of it was. Not just hearing through somebody else, but to see for himself. And he saw the state of what things were going on. And he said, okay, we can do this in this way. And then he went back and he built a team. And then he took the team and they went down there and they got to work. Because here's what you need to know about your burden. This might be a good thing to even write down today. That your burden means nothing if you won't begin. Your burden means nothing if you won't begin. Maybe you don't interact with people like this near as much as I do, but in the line of work that I do, I have spent much of my life hearing from people who had a vision. And that's all they had. They had a dream. But they wasn't doing nothing, Dr. King. They weren't doing nothing with it. Not like him. Dr. King took some steps. Other people just got dreams. They had this burden. Oh, I think somebody should do something over there. Will you do something over there, sir? I thought you were the one with the burden. See, a lot of people have these burdens. A lot of people have these dreams. A lot of people have these ideas. A lot of people have these things that they see. Oh, it should be. Oh, it could be. Oh, it ought to be. Oh, did you watch this documentary? It hurts my heart so bad that that's going on over there. Who's going to do something? Maybe you. See, because a burden means nothing if you won't begin. And what I love so much about Nehemiah is that he began. He talked to the king because he was burdened. He got some resources, and he evaluated the project that they had in front of him, and he came back, and he gathered a team, and he just kept working, and he just kept working it, and he just kept working it. But guess what? That's not the story. The story isn't that. If you were to read the book of Nehemiah, read his self-titled work, what you would actually find is that the majority of the words that Nehemiah uses are about this burden and then about something that happened as they began their work. He writes a lot about the opposition that they faced while they were working. A lot. It's interesting. He had favor with the king. But when you read Nehemiah chapter 3 and Nehemiah chapter 4 and Nehemiah chapter 5 and even into Nehemiah chapter 6, what you will find is that people who you thought may have been for him, you would think this is a good idea, were actually the ones antagonizing him and the people doing this work. There were these people. We know a few of their names. One guy's name was Sanballat. The other guy's name was Tobiah. And these men felt it their job to go out and hate on the work that Nehemiah was doing. They had opposition. Well, they had the resources. The king provided the resources. It was unbelievable. They had people motivated to do it. It was unbelievable. But they faced this opposition. And the story of Nehemiah is a story of continuing to take steps, continuing to move forward, continuing to go, even when you face opposition. You know, too many people view opposition as a stop sign. They do. Like maybe even, especially for spiritual people, they view it as this spiritual stop sign. Oh, it got difficult. I better not do this anymore. Oh, it was tough. I better not. We view any opposition. Some of you, that's the reason you stopped going to the gym. It got difficult to wake up early in the morning. You're like, opposition. I guess God wants me chunky. Maybe you weren't willing to keep fighting when you faced opposition. Too many people view opposition as a stop sign. Well, you know, I asked one time and they said no, so I guess that means God's not in that. No, God is in that. Keep going. Too many people do. A little bit of opposition, and they stop. I prayed for a few days, but it got difficult praying, so I just stopped praying. You know, I started trusting God with my money, started to give, but then things got a little tight, so I just stopped giving because I just thought it'd be easy once I started giving. What? You know, I was serving, but then it got a little difficult to serve, and I got a little tired, and I had all these other things I could do, and I just decided I wanted to stop. I was just going to stop serving because it got difficult. What? What I love about the story of Nehemiah is he did not allow the opposition to stop him. He did not allow the difficulty going on around him to stop him. You see, opposition doesn't always mean, oh no. Sometimes opposition means, let's go. Sometimes that's what opposition means. Sometimes there is pressure against you because of what it is you are doing. Sometimes there's difficulty coming around you because of what it is you're trying to do. Not everybody wants to see you succeed. Not everybody wants you to take every step forward following God. Not every person wants to see that for you. And sometimes the opposition you face and the opposition you feel isn't some sign to say, oh no, we better not. But sometimes it's a sign to say, let's go. Would you just shout that with a little bit of faith? Shout, let's go. Come on, a little bit more faith. Shout, let's go. Man, I ain't got time to tell y'all all the nonsense we've been dealing with these last several weeks since we made this announcement of vision. I ain't got time. And to be quite honest, you ain't got the patience to listen to me. So much opposition. Opposition that feels a lot like Nehemiah. Now, granted, there have been so many things going good. I mean, you heard in the news, if you were here for that as of like right now, people have given about 70% of what we need. It's a little over $41,000 of the 60 that we need has already been given to enable the work that needs to be done. It's incredible. It's awesome. Not only that, like we have had so many people reach out to us saying, hey, I can help and I can do this and I can do this for you and I'm trained in this and I can do this for free. And we have had quotes come in from real people who this is the real work they do and like not just like, and they're giving us quotes that like kind of blow our mind to make all of this work that needs to happen under budget, and it's incredible. But then we got some people that we thought were supposed to be on our side that, oh dear Lord, like, oh dear Lord, you know? Like 3 weeks ago, we were supposed to start doing construction. We got timelines and everything. We're supposed to start construction because our hope, our goal to be in the space and everything, it was all good. Owner was ready, we were ready, and then we got blocked. And so as of right now, we haven't got to knock down the first wall, move the first anything. And can I tell you it's frustrating? It's frustrating when you have opposition, especially when you've got a lot going good. There's all this happening that's positive, but then there's opposition. And what do you do? What do you do when you have the good and the opposition? Most people want to throw in a towel. Most people want to say, "Oh, it must not be God. I guess we just shouldn't. I guess we probably didn't hear right. Probably wasn't God. Probably wasn't supposed to. Probably didn't need to." But can I remind you that opposition doesn't always mean "oh no"? Sometimes opposition means "let's go." See, I've been leaning, some of you have been with us for a minute, and you've heard me lean into the story of Nehemiah a time or two because this story has been so instrumental to me along my journey. Because I've told people many times, some of you heard me say this very thing, that for me, what God is doing in Memphis and me even being back in Memphis and serving in Memphis and trying to build a church for all people so that all people are transformed in Christ has a lot more to do with a burden than a vision. For me, this thing started with a burden. It didn't start with this vision of what I saw. No. It started with a burden. Oh, God, it can't be this way. God, I'm tired of the church hour on Sunday being the most segregated time of the week. I'm tired of it. Not in this city. I'm tired of people feeling judged and unworthy to come and receive your grace. I'm tired of that. There should be a church in the city that looks like the city that is for the city, that will serve the city with abandonment because it's in that city on purpose, trying to bring heaven to earth. This should be. It was a burden, and it's still a burden. The reason I keep fighting is the burden. Not just the picture, not just the vision, not just this hope, this dream, this idea. It's a burden. It's a burden. And that's what Nehemiah had. Because Nehemiah had this burden. And he moved off the burden. And the move from the burden brought resources that he needed, brought people that he needed, allowed them to get started. But it also attracted opposition. And I was rereading this account this week. And I've read the book of Nehemiah so many times. A lot of times because it's been something I keep going back to on this journey of starting believing and building this church. But also read before that and read just other times just because I read the Bible because I love God and I want to find out more from him and his word. And I stumbled across this verse. And my prayer is that this little verse will minister to you like it ministered to me. It's found in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 6. And it's this amazing deduction that Nehemiah makes. Because literally, Sanballat and Tobiah they're antagonizing the people. They're trying to make the people think that they should stop. They're trying to make the people think that they are useless. They're trying to check them. Literally, they're like, oh, your wall is so sorry. If a fox crawled on top, it would crumble the wall. So clearly, we know one thing about Sanballat and Tobiah. They couldn't check, therefore they were white, right? That's what we know. That's what we know. I'm kidding, but we know that. But then Nehemiah, as they're antagonizing, they're hollering, they're doing all this stuff, Nehemiah says this in chapter 4, verse 6. He says, we built the wall of Jerusalem all the way around the city, but it was only half as tall as it should be. We did this much because the people worked with all their heart. Have you ever worked with all your heart and only got half as far as you needed to get? Because that's where Nehemiah was. All the people, they were serving, they were working. People would be lobbing these sorry checks at them, and they're just like, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. People trying to say that what they're doing doesn't matter. What they're doing is not important. What they're doing won't work. So I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep working. And they work with their whole heart. And they got the thing done all the way around the city. Only problem is only half as tall as it should be. Have you ever put your whole heart into something and only got out of it half of what you needed to get out of it? Come on, you put your whole heart into that relationship and he still broke up with you. You put everything you had into studying for that final, only to find out you still failed the final. Whole heart. Half of what I needed to happen. You invited everybody, and only half of them showed up. That is what Nehemiah experienced right here. And it ministered to me on several different levels. And some of you think that is a very depressing ministering. Well, understand that sometimes I felt this way on this project. This project that we have of creating a permanent home. Because God opened doors. And he is still opening doors. I mean, my goodness. This building that we're looking at, some of y'all, I've never said these words publicly, but let me just tell you these publicly. The building that we are in the process of trying to take over and get in and do this stuff, it is owned by a group of Muslim men who I found out this week that somebody who is a dear friend of them told me that I am the first American, and what they really meant was white guy, that these men have ever trusted. And they've known them for years and years and years. And they said, I've never heard them speak positively about a white man. Never. And then here we are. And there's a hiccup. There's a block. Because we had great plans. I wanted to be in and start the new year in the new place with a new location. And it's going to be great. And we were on time. Until opposition. We had agreements and plans and schedules and people able to work their schedules to make it all happen and to make it happen on budget. But then opposition. And what Nehemiah deduces is that he's given the best effort, but the best effort's only half of what they need. So you have two options at that point. You either stop, because we gave our best and we're supposed to be done, but we ain't done. Or you retool and keep going. See, what you find Nehemiah do, you should read this sometime. In Nehemiah chapter 4, right after that, he starts talking about how they're going to handle these haters. And so they have half the people get ready to fight, and the other half the people work on the wall. So half the people out there be like, you better not, that was a sorry check. I will sword you if you check them again. You know, like they're out there protecting, while the other half of the people, they up here building the wall, building the wall, building the wall. And then the shift change, these people go out and they take their sword and they're like, he told you not to, I will sword you. While these people are over here building the wall, and they retool. And they got a fresh plan and a fresh idea and a fresh way to take steps forward. And people still kept opposing him. They kept making steps forward, but they kept experiencing difficulty. But they completed what God had said do. And I keep reminding myself of that. And of these words that Nehemiah spoke in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 3, that I find so powerful. He says, this is Nehemiah, when someone's trying to get him to come down and enter into all this nonsense. Somebody's trying to, see, y'all don't even understand, like the nonsense that I have been invited into to help try to resolve this. Nonsense. Trying to be a mediator between two people that won't talk to each other. Trying to help people figure out stuff without having to get all nonsensical. But then I got reminded of this week. Nehemiah said, I am doing an important work, so I can't come down. See, these people who had been antagonizing Nehemiah and his people were trying to get Nehemiah to get into the mix of this, trying to get Nehemiah to get all blah, 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 and get all in the midst of it. And Nehemiah said, I'm doing an important work. I ain't got time for you. I ain't got time for your nonsense. I ain't got time for you being petty just to be petty. We got work to do. We got something God has called us to do. And what I love is they did not allow a setback, negativity, or anything to take them from their post. And I have news for you. Neither will we. Neither will we. I ain't got time to tell you all the craziness, and some of you don't want to hear it. Here's what I can promise you. We got options. Somebody say options. Yeah. And we working some things out. And maybe it's this location that we originally thought. Maybe it's a location that's a block away that's ready to go. They'll start construction for us on Tuesday if we want to. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But we got options. And we will move this thing forward. Because God called us here. And God called us to build a church for all people in the heart of the most diverse part of this city, to plant our flag on that street, and baby, we will. So that all people are transformed in Christ. So what are we going to do? Well, you know what we're going to do? We're going to lean into the great words of a great Memphis leader and thought thinker, the Grindfather, Tony Allen. He said it this way. He said, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. Now, he's talking about basketball, but can I tell you, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So what are we going to do? We're going to stay ready. We're going to stay ready. We're just going to let them get ready. See, that's the beautiful thing about where we are. We have contractors calling me. You ever try to call a contractor? They don't call you back. These people call me. They are ready to work for us. They are ready to move things forward. We got people trying to figure out their nonsense while we say, look, we got another opportunity over here. We will do this. And I don't have time. I have an important work to do. So I can't come down and deal with this nonsense. We have a gospel to preach, a God to serve, a vision to carry out, a burden that compels us. And so we are going to stay ready. So how does that look? Well, it looks like this. Next Sunday, we're going to start a new series here called Later is Now. And I would love for you to spread the word, invite people, share it on social media, call that person you've been thinking about inviting for a while, but you're like, they've been talking about building for a minute. I don't really want to invite them next Sunday. It's going to be a powerful series that helps people get settled what needs to get settled and quit pushing off those things that matter, but make today matter. It's going to be incredible. And then on December the 22nd, we're going to celebrate Christmas right here at the Paradiso. It's going to be great. We've got an incredible worship experience planned. We're going to have pictures for you, your friends, family with Santa Claus. Santa Claus is going to be here a few days early. We squeezed it to his schedule. He's busy later on that week, but we got him here on the 22nd. It's going to be great. We're going to have hot chocolate, have all these great opportunities. Got a couple of surprises we're working on that I don't want to share with you quite yet because I got to make sure they can come in on time. But it's going to be an incredible celebration. And then we're going to start the new year with a series that's been in my heart for almost a year now. That I've just been waiting to preach. It's like, not yet. And you know what? We're going to start this year with it. And it fits so beautifully to what I've just shared with you now. Because it's going to be a series that we're calling Unstoppable. Because many of us have a lot of things that we allow to stop us. We allow offense to stop us. Not when you're unoffendable. How do you become unoffendable? We're going to learn in January. It's going to be powerful. It's going to be incredible. And we're going to keep moving forward. You know what we're also going to do? We're going to stay ready on this project front. And so I would invite you, if you don't currently subscribe to our weekly news, we send out one email a week. It comes out on Thursday morning. I'd love for you to lean in there because we're going to share news there. We're going to share updates there as they arise. Not only that, if you haven't been to our website, believingchurch.com/so that, and checked out the information, we'll be uploading videos, uploading updates as these things come to be. We'll be communicating in this vehicle. But can I tell you, there are opportunities in front of us. We just going to stay ready so that way when the opportunity comes, we ain't got to get ready. I love the way this old quote used to say. It said, success is when preparation meets opportunity. You can't control opportunity, but you can prepare and prepare and prepare. So we're going to keep calling and keep planning and keep working and keep saving. And we're going to keep giving. And we're going to be ready on December 8th to finish this goal. So that way we have everything we need to take steps forward. And we're going to prepare. And then the opportunity is going to come and people are going to be like, look at this. And it's like, no. We just prepared. We prepared. And we didn't allow opposition to shake us from our post. So I want to invite you today to join me in prayer. You know, this week, and we had it set up from the beginning this way. It's so crazy how God works. But this last week, the focus was favor. And God has given us favor. You say, I thought you just spent 32 minutes talking about opposition. I did. And God has given us favor. And this week, the word that we're ending our time of focus with is just to pray for believing, to pray for the church, to pray for direction, to pray for provision, to pray for all of these things. And I didn't know that Wednesday afternoon would be this greatest moment of opposition for us. I didn't know that then when we set this, but God did. And I believe it's significant that this week we all lean in, praying for what God is doing in Memphis through believing, so that all people are transformed in him.